Gamers.
What's up, everybody? This is John with the Unpaid Gamers. I'm going to try this again because the last time I went to stream something, apparently there's technical difficulties, and by that I mean I forgot to plug my microphone back in. So it was like an hour and nothing that just streamed, so I apologize for that, but should be all good now. Should be, I say. So anyway, on to what I'd like to talk about, which is going to be FMV games. I don't know who else played those, or if you even know what they are. But an FMV game is typically a game that includes live action video, like a movie. And you make choices. A lot of times it's real similar to like a choose your own adventure book. Sometimes it's like a point and click kind of game. I don't even really know there's not that many of those out there anyway these days, but it's pretty much by definition anything that includes live action video in it. They really became popular around like the Windows 95 era, console wise, Sega CD. And it was really the shift from cartridge to CD-ROM that made that possible because of the storage space was greatly increased. So a lot of games kind of started to go that route, and it was, you can kind of see this in history with whether it's VR or with the Kinect or just some kind of new gimmick, and all of a sudden you'll see a ton of stuff come out with that. And that's really what happened with the full motion video games. But for whatever reason, I just love them. I don't know. I can't get enough of them. I collect like the retro ones, so I like to go to thrift stores or anything that where I just come across them. If I see them, I'll buy them. I don't know if there's a new one out and it includes some type of cheesy movie stuff. Definitely at least gonna play it, and most of the time I'll end up buying those too. So I don't know, it's like a guilty pleasure of mine, I suppose. So where that started, I don't really know. Maybe when I was a kid, I used to like the choose your own adventure books. That's kind of what I related to, I guess. I'd go to the library, and any of those I would see, I would check them out. I would come home with like a stack of them. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially just like a novel, but you read part of the story, and then you make a choice, and it tells you what page to turn to. So like, you encounter a room. If you go in, turn to page 47. If you turn around and run away, turn to page 39 or something like that, and it just kind of carries on. And I don't know, the first time I read those, I thought it was like just the most amazing experience. And I didn't really know why people would just want to read regular books. No, that was then. I definitely see the value of a set story these days. But I do love anything that's kind of open-ended and allows the reader, the viewer, to kind of help shape the story based on their choices. And I suppose it's kind of why we play games anyway, is because we want to put ourselves in those experiences and shape stories ourselves. So it's kind of I don't know. I guess it's that same need for me. Excuse me. So I remember really being, I've played video games back to the Commodore 64 days. The regular Nintendo NES. Probably, personally, the big system for me is Super Nintendo. That's when I really got one of my own for the first time. NES I played a lot of, but it was over a friend's house. So Super Nintendo was kind of my main system, and I played that thing to death. Rented any game I possibly could. That was like the treat, I guess. Making it through the school week, and then on the weekends, my parents would take me down and let me rent a game. And Super Nintendo obviously is those sprite-based graphics. It's mostly 2D. There was some 3D effects chip stuff in there that really kind of had a different look. Star Fox was one. Vortex, that was another one. Stunt Race FX, those type of games that were kind of 3D. But for the most part, it was 2D sprite-based stuff. And then for me, I got into the Nintendo 64 next and the PlayStation afterwards. But N64, of course, started moving into that 3D world, and it was polygons, 3D rendered graphics. And PlayStation had that too, but it wasn't as powerful. But the advantage they had was the storage medium, which is the CD-based stuff. So, you start to see an influx of a lot of those things that included cinematic sequences. And, I suppose prior to that, Sega CD, that's actually really, before PlayStation even, I didn't have one of those. I had went into that Nintendo 64 next, but back around that Super Nintendo area, my close friend of mine, would go over and spend the night at his house, and we'd stay up all night, play games, and do goofy shit. But he had a Sega Genesis, and he had the 32X, and he had the Sega CD. So, I was thrown into all that world too. And I remember seeing some of those games and was just so amazed at the time. Like, it was so cool to see moving video in games. And if you look back at them now, they're kind of terrible because the video was so compressed and the resolution was so low, and there's not very many colors, so it looks like a big blocky mess when you try to watch them. And even the video, they would be in a little window. It wouldn't even take up the whole screen. And there's such gems like Marky Mark. What is it? Make your own video. Let me see. Hold on. Let me get this up here. There were some really great ones out there. Let me see. It is, where are they at? I know they did like a series, and there were 2 or 3 of them. Make my video, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. And then there was a crisscross one, an NXS one, and there was a Power Factory featuring C&C Music Factory. So those, the only one of those I really played was the Marky Mark. And I remember, you basically just piece video clips together and make your own music video. So it's kind of like just a goofy little editing suite. So that was on the Sega CD. And I'm trying to think back, thinking about this stuff kind of brings back some memories for me. But, I know Windows 95. I remember experiencing those discs, load forever. And there was a lot of those kind of point and click adventure games with full motion video. Myst I would even include because it had some. I didn't have a PC at that time that was capable of that stuff, and nobody I really knew did. A friend of mine, his dad had a computer, and we would play Myst on it. And man, I don't even remember the name of some of those. Some sci-fi point and click thing. I don't know, but it had mixed video. But for the most part, my introduction was mainly Sega CD, and that was around 92, 93, something like that. Some of the bigger names: Sewer Shark, Double Switch, Night Trap. There were some really big titles around then, and most of them are really crappy games if you go back and play them. There's Sherlock Holmes, which that one was a little bit more sophisticated. You it was kind of a point and click thing, and you would try to solve the mystery. Most of them, though, were like quick time events. Like something pops up on the screen, and you hit a button at the right time. Like I know there was a Power Rangers one, and that one was that one was pretty rough. But you would you see the Power Rangers go into a battle, and up is like jump and down's duck, and just pop up on the screen, and you'd have to hit the buttons and get it right. But at the time, it was just so amazing though to see the video clips in a game like that. It was something that was unprecedented. And there were some pretty good games though. My favorite game was Rise of the Dragon. Although it's not really an FMV game though, it's just like a point and click adventure game. You have scenes and you click around and try to find clues and solve puzzles, and it has talking audio and some still image moving picture kind of thing. But that was probably my favorite Sega CD game. I don't even know that I would really classify it in the FMV genre though. Space Ace, that was a big one. Who Shot Johnny Rock, Mad Dog McGree. Dragon's Lair was probably one of the most popular because it hit so many different platforms. It was in the arcade, Sega CD, 3DO, pretty much anything. Now it's been released on Blu-ray. You can get it on PC, you can get it on your iPhone. I mean, everything that Dragon's Lair has been on. So, yeah, there was a handful of good games like that. The PC, they kind of took things, and some of those games just kind of went down a little bit riskier route, I guess. Risque is what I was really meaning to say. Not really anything that was too adult content related, but it was kind of pushing the envelope for the time. A great resource if you want to look for yourself at some of this stuff. fmvworld.com is a great website, and I've used it a lot over the years, just kind of keeping track of stuff that I miss. And you can go and look at the games. You can look at like all the games. You can break it down by year, which is good because you can, if you want to try to find some retro stuff or just see what's out these days. So anyway, it's a great resource. I really don't know what it is about that. Maybe it's just a nostalgia thing for me. Why I like those type of games so much. It was a time where it was obviously a jump forward in the way games were presented and made, and some of the quality. There were some really, really great games out there. By the time the PlayStation hit, I think that really stepped up as far as the quality end goes. Because then you went from this really, really incredibly grainy stuff to about like I guess DVD type of quality in a way. I mean, Resident Evil is one of the biggest games. Its intro had like a live action sequence. It's not really an FMV game, but it had that intro that was really cool and cheesy too, mind you. But then you did some things like Rebel Assault 2, which I guess I would have trouble lumping it in the FMV genre because they kind of went the Mortal Kombat route of they took realistic photo images and rendered them as sprites and then just included them in the game. So, Rebel Assault 2 was very, you would see what looked like live action, but it was moving, kind of like a sprite or like a regular 2D game. But, it was still because of the storage space, you could do things like that. And it was, at the time I remember seeing those and thinking, wow, like this is what the futures looks like, and you go back and look at them now and it's like, well, that's crap. But, definitely some great steps forward, and I remember being so impressed with that type of stuff. And around that time, the PlayStation time, probably the two best titles in that genre would have to be, in my opinion, one was the X Files, and it was a point and click kind of thing, but it had tons of video clips in it. And the way it would work is so, so the story was Agents Mulder and Scully went missing, and you were this new FBI agent. And your job was to kind of follow this case, and you end up investigating and try to find them and stuff like that. But it was really cool because it was a point and click game. So you'd sit at your desk, for example, and your drawer over to the right. You if you move your cursor over there and click on it, then it cuts to a video clip of him opening the drawer and pulling out something that's in it or something like that. And you could go to different locations and interview people, and you the other cool thing about that, the other system they introduced was, and I say introduced, but I don't know if it was the first game to do it. Very similar to like Mass Effect, conversation wise, because you would talk to them and you would get to pick what you wanted to say back. So you would have these branching conversations, and sometimes it's still goofy because you click on something and the voice clip just, I don't know. There's one, what's that, Skinner, the bald guy in there. He's just a jerk sometimes in those games. So it's kind of funny when you pick something and it cuts to the clip of him doing something, saying something, mean to you. But I don't know, that was a pretty sophisticated game, and it's probably, if I had to pick one that was my favorite full motion video game of all time, that would be it, I think. It was a great story. The other good thing about it is typically in these FMV games, it's the budget sucks and the acting is terrible, and they're just like bad B movie quality things. Even not just the video quality, but again, acting, sets, like it looks so cheesy. And the X Files really looked just like an X Files episode. I guess they got some TV type of production crews and budgets and things like that. So, you watch the X Files and the X Files game, and it's like you're watching an episode. But it was really cool because, like I said, you got to go to different locations. You had to follow this path, solve this mystery. You explore these scenes. Some stuff you would, you'd have to sit and figure out because it'd be a matter of taking a item in your inventory and dragging it over top of the right thing, like to pick a lock or to, give this to somebody or something. And that was the kind of situation I was talking about with Skinner being a jerk. You'd give him something, and if it wasn't what he was wanting to do, he'd be like, well, I don't know what to do with that or something. So, as you're trying stuff, you might try 5 different things, and every time, I don't know what to do with that. What do you want me to do with that? Like, it was, it was pretty funny. But anyway, yeah, that was probably one of my favorite games of all time for that genre. The other really good one, they were on PlayStation as well, and it would be the Wing Commander 3 and 4. So if you haven't played those, Wing Commander is a space flight simulation type of game. Not really simulation, like it's more arcadey, but your view is of the cockpit, and you go around and do dog fights, and you're fighting the Kilrathi, which are these cat-like aliens. And the first one was on Super Nintendo, probably PC too. I don't know. I played on the Super Nintendo. And, you would go out on these missions in your ship, do what you need to do with that. And then in between all that, you would go to like this space, like the organization you're with, their like cafe or recreation area. And You could talk to the bartender. You could talk to some of the other pilots that would be happen to be sitting around there. You could check the whiteboard, which they kept track of how many kills they had. It's kind of that's kind of nice. But it was really great, great game, and the story was fair enough. But it I always loved the ability to go to that cafe thing and just kind of hang out and I don't know, new kid, you use your imagination. Like that's all technology was back then. So I don't know, just had a sense of you doing these missions, and I don't know if you can hear that, but my dog's barking in the background, probably for the mailman or UPS or something. So yeah. So anyway, those type of games, you would sit and play, go through the missions, go sit at the bar, hang out, talk to people. So when they got to PlayStation, they introduced full motion video, and one of the biggest draws about that was Mark Hamill, which Luke Skywalker, was the main starring role. So you play as Mark Hamill, and the way they would do it is you would still have the missions as far as doing the space flight part of things, but then the hub part where you're in the bar stuff, that is it's like a digitized kind of Mortal Kombat looking thing with sprites and stuff. And sorry, give me 1 sec. I guess I'm gonna have to take a brief intermission for a sec while my dogs and these UPS people are freaking out trying to deliver stuff to me. So, brief intermission. I'll be right back. All right, everybody, I'm back. So that's the benefit of streaming live, right? So what was I saying? So I was talking about Wing Commander. And, okay, so when they introduced PlayStation, the PlayStation version of Wing Commander, again, you would have your missions to where you would be doing the space flight, dogfighting type of stuff. And it really, it looked better than Super Nintendo, but it was the same format, almost the same look. But the hub part was like a digitized, like Mortal Kombat type of stuff. You would see the hangar. You could go to a few different parts of the ship, and you would see random digitized characters in there that you could talk to. So then when you go up to talk to them, that part would then switch to FMV video of Mark Hamill and whatever actor talking and carry on the conversations. And at that point, it did a lot of, pick your own response kind of thing. And I don't know, those are really great games. It probably, if I had to pick like second favorite of that type of stuff, it's definitely the way to go. Would be the Wing Commander 3 and 4. I think it's 4. Malcolm McDowell's even is it even in there? I don't know what other celebrity was there, and that was kind of the thing too. With PlayStation and Sega CD, a lot of these games, you would get cameos from actors, wanting to be in these games. Corey Haim was a big one for Double Switch. Mark Hamill for Wing Commander. Malcolm McDowell for Wing Commander. I know there's a lot more. I'm having all kinds of trouble today. I know there was a lot more. Tia Carrera was in one for the 3DO called Daedalus Encounter, I believe. Anyway, it's a very, very weird genre. And, that was probably the height of it, was PlayStation and Sega CD, because of this new emergence of this storage medium. And, since then, like, you would see things like Command and Conquer was another big one that would have its strategy gameplay, and then in between you would have the full motion video cutscenes, and they really kind of carried that on for quite a while. It's just weird because it pops up every now and again, like one of the Maddens. I don't even know which one it is, Madden 16, 15, something like that. They would have like the halftime show would be full motion video, and just really weird. And then there's of course the PC. There's always kind of been a steady flow of full motion videos on the full motion video games on the PC. A lot of weird ones out there. Some more adult than others. They did like let's say BMX Triple X was one. They put that out. That wasn't on PC. That was on Xbox, GameCube, and PS2. And I really forget its gimmick, but it was I know you could race as like you could race as like girls with like pasties on or something, or maybe they'd be topless or something like that. And then I think it would just put cutscenes of like girls dancing, but it wasn't really anything adult, I guess. But it made a big deal because it was one of the big mature content video games to just openly include, objectionable type of stuff. The Guy game was a big one that did that. That was on. They released it on DVD. There was a PC game. It was for Xbox, PS2. And now the way it did it, it did actually feature nudity, but when you would play through the game, it was basically these girls. It was like almost like a Girls Gone Wild type of scenario, but they would go and play these the trivia game, and you would guess whether they get it right or not, I think. And you'd have to progress through all the levels, and it was censored. But then when you beat the game, you could go back and watch it uncensored. So that was definitely, that was one of those out there, like adult content type of stuff, and goofy. I mean, there were some that were a lot more tasteful than that had adult type of content. There was one, what was it? Tender Loving Care, I think, and that had William Hurt in it. What is it? William Hurt? Tender Loving Care? Let me see. And it's not that it really had that much, I don't know, like adult video content, but the whole subject matter was a mature kind of experience, and some, I guess, sexual undertone or like type of content. John Hurt, that's who's in it, John Hurt. And it was one of those Hurt guys. But, it would do weird things, like you'd play through and it would like present you with a quiz and like this whole like evaluating your personality, and it was about some, I haven't played it forever, but some kind of steamy affair or something like that. And, a lot of just weird entries. And most of that type of stuff, like I said, is on the PC. When you stick to consoles in general, gameplay is pretty, M-rated max. But you get a lot of weird stuff in the computer world. And, the cool thing about some of that stuff is with Blu-rays and DVDs and stuff, they would even kind of format some of they would work well just on a DVD player, because it's choose your own adventure kind of thing, and the branching titles and video clips for those formats would kind of serve that well. So you would get, like I said, that Dragon Slayer. I think they put it on DVD. That guy game they put on DVD. You would see some movies. One example, and there's very few of these, but one example is that Return to the House on a Haunted Hill, which is a terrible, terrible movie. But it was the sequel to the remake House on a Haunted Hill. If that tells you anything. But that it was basically a choose your own adventure movie, and I don't know, man, that movie was bad. But I bought it because it was like a full motion video kind of thing, and no, I'm just a sucker for that stuff. Thrift stores and stuff. If I find them, I'll buy them. Kind of the key to that is to look in the CD section, by the way, because most people in those type of services, for whatever reason, don't really know anything about that type of stuff, or where any of those products should be, and it's just in a CD case usually because it's PC game, so they'll end up in the CD section. So that's where I would find most of them. And the cool thing about it for me was it was a fun hobby to go to these places. It's kind of like finding hidden treasures. And if you do get lucky to come across one, it'll be like $3 or $2 or $3, something like that. So very inexpensive hobby, and just a labor of love for me. Guilty pleasure throughout the years. So it just it was always exciting for me to find them, and still, you don't see them too much anymore. There is one company that stands out to me, Wales Interactive, and they've really kind of picked up that genre, and they're making some really great FMV games, and you can find those on like PS4 and stuff. There's a couple of them on Switch, but they do a handful, like one of which I streamed a handful of times so far. It's called The Late Shift, and it plays out like a choose your own adventure movie. And I think there's like 7 different endings. The video's high quality, DVD or Blu-ray type of quality. And they've made a few other ones too. The next one that I want to get into that I'll probably stream as well is I have to look at it every time because I can't get the name right, but The Infectious Madness of Dr. Decker is what it's called. And it plays like almost like those text adventure games. You type in what you want to do or say, and it will recognize certain responses. So its setup is you're playing this role of like a doctor, basically like a therapist or something. And the video clips are the patient sitting there talking to you, and then you can type and interact with them, and then it plays certain clips based on what you play, or sorry, what you say. And yeah, so they've done that one. They've done The Bunker, which is a point and click kind of game. Haven't played through that one, but it's on my list. And their newest one is The Shape-Shifting Detective, which I don't really know much about it. It's like a murder mystery kind of thing. I know it's FMV. I don't really know what to say about it. I don't, but yes, that's the news. I know that one's on Switch too. It's on my list, but I want to play through that Dr. Decker one next up. But anyway, yeah, this Wales Interactive, they're pumping out a lot of these, and they put it on multiple platforms, and it's really great to see. For me, it's great to kind of see a little bit of resurgence in that genre, because like I said, they're typically used to be B-movie type of stuff. Now, one cool thing about technology is so easy for most people to make film and quality media that way. This FMV genre is kind of benefiting from it, because if you watch like Late Shift or any of that stuff, again, it's like HD quality video. The acting's pretty good. Some of it's a little cheesy here and there, but you're going to get some of that when you force the narrative, along that certain path. But really, I mean, quality entertainment these days with a lot of these. So that's definitely, if you're interested in seeing some of the new iterations of these type of games, Wales Interactive's the way to go. They've been winning a lot of different awards, and I'm always, anytime I see their games out, I usually pick them up because the other cool thing about them is usually when they come out, they're 10-20 bucks. It's not at all like a $60 game. So if you just kind of want to give one a try and experience it, it's a very easy admission price. Um, Her Story was one that recently kind of came out, and it was on iPads, iPhones, Windows, and that was really cool because it kind of presented itself like some of those films you see where it's the view of like the computer. You know what I mean? Like you have a desktop and you can kind of move it around and manipulate it, and it loads you into this environment, and your job is to sift through these video clips, and you're trying to solve this case, and it's this woman talking about her missing husband, but you're browsing through like a police database. So like she'll say something and you got to follow what she says, and then you kind of use that and search for something based on what she said, and then find a new video clip, and then you play that, and then you piece together the story as you go. And it's really it can get kind of tough and tricky, honestly. I was playing through that one for a bit, and I end up getting stuck a little bit. And like when I play a lot of especially these older games or like indie games like that, I really commit myself to not using the internet for help. And if I get stuck, I get stuck. And sometimes a couple days later, I'll end up figuring something out. And I don't know, it just feels so cheap to do that. Not to say I don't do that at all, but there's certain experiences that I really commit myself to doing, in an old school type of way. And I don't know, for those who haven't done that, I would really recommend just at least just doing a game like that, especially if it's something that you need to figure out, or there's some mystery to it, or you have to solve puzzles or something. Just just don't cheat. It's very rewarding when you don't look up how to do something and you finally figure it out. But you got to be okay with getting stuck for a while if you do that route. So but yeah, that was one of the first ones in a while that really got a lot of mainstream attention. Consistently throughout the PC lifespan and that stuff. Tex Murphy was one of the bigger names, and they did a bunch of those, and they were like noir murder mystery titles. There was one kind of hidden gem that I guess I would put it as a FMV game, but it really just had clips, but it did a lot of really cool things. So its setup was it's so goofy. The police they were trying to catch this killer, and they just can't figure it out. They got this disc from the killer, or I say killer, but like this family was missing or something like that. I don't even really remember, but and I think this is the one that's like admitted to it or whatever. But anyway, it's this notorious bad guy that's admitted his guilt, and he sent the police this disc, and they just can't crack it. Their experts can't. So they release it to the public, and you're one of the people, of course, who gets it and tries to help the police solve it. So and most of its game was these little point and click puzzles that you would have to do. But it also, like, what made it unique was, if you're wondering why I include it, like when you would progress a little bit, it would play like a clip of like, maybe showing the family at like a lighthouse or something, or, and they were like FMV little sequences. But what made this game unique is they would kind of blend real data with fake data, and they would incorporate like real websites and fake websites, and it's all done through your browser. But you may see like a picture with Like, it would just be a picture or something, and you would be stumped on it. And this was one of those games you'd be stumped for days on, because especially when it came out, the internet wasn't what it was today. So there was no just looking up the answer. But you have this picture, and you could comb over it, and then eventually you may find, like, on the very corner of it or whatever, there's a very faint inscription of something. So, it might be in Latin or something. So you have to go translate that, and then it gives you a phrase, and then you could find that phrase, and you might come across, like, a Wikipedia thing, and your answer might just be in there somewhere, or it would have specific sites that they would put up that you would point to that looked like, a real website, and you might find your answer on there. But it was really cool because you didn't never really know if you were on a real site or not. Something specifically for the game, or just some tourist site in some weird country or something. Like, it did a really great job, and I think it would email you from time to time, like the killer taunting you, or the like a partner or something sending you information. So, it was set up to really kind of get you stumped for a few days. And I remember one time I was stuck on a puzzle I couldn't figure it out for nothing. I'm browsing these websites, all this stuff, and like 2 days later, I get an email from, like, my partner saying, "Oh, hey, I found this piece of information," and then you take that, and it ends up sending you where you needed to go, and then you progress finally. But yeah, it was a really interesting game that used that stuff. There was another game EA did, and I'm trying to remember the names on the tip of my tongue. It used FMV sequences, but it did kind of a lot of that type of stuff. But it would also call you on your phone, make calls to you. The problem with this stuff is it requires some servers and like live service integration, and most of those games are just not supported anymore. So you can't even play them if you ever find them. Missing that game I was talking about with the killer, though. I don't know if I said it, but it is Missing, by the way, is the name of it. And now there is a game that's called Missing, an interactive thriller, and I don't think that's it. Yeah, that's not. That's more of a real FMV game. This one was, what was it? Missing. Here it is. Missing the 13th Victim. And it went by another name because I think it was a European title too. And then they did a sequel. But like the fan community on it ended up making some patches and making it work offline without that company being in existence anymore. Now, as of a couple years ago, it was only for the first one. The second one still couldn't be played, and I don't know if they were ever doing it or not. But that's a very cool game to check out, by the way. That EA one, I don't remember what the name of that was. It was almost kind of like a Matrix type of setting. And, something about, a bunch of hackers and doing their stuff, and I don't know what it is. But, yeah, again, I know that one, I don't think anybody's ever done anything with that. So I think if you ever found it, you'd never be able to play it. But, man, what was the name of that? I don't know, maybe it'd come to me. Yeah, there's been a ton of interesting, great experiences, and I guess that's kind of what I like about these things, is it was a very experimental time period. So when you do find them, you get the cheesy acting, you get just kind of the niche gameplay, but a lot of them just did some really weird things that were out of the ordinary and just kind of cool to see in a video game. And especially in one of the videos I talked about just kind of getting bored with some of that stuff and the direction of games and playing almost every type of game there is and just no new surprises. When I find some of this old stuff and they just do something really weird, it's refreshing to me. Another one of the really great games that I played was by Sierra Online, and it was the Phantasmagoria series. And I remember playing the second one. I don't know that I ever played through the first one. I think I did years later finally, but there was a store. It's called like Hastings, I think, is what it was. And I just got my brand new e-machine, and I was getting into the world of playing PC games at that point, and came across Phantasmagoria 2 up there, and it was on like clearance or something because nobody likes these games but me apparently. And it was such a great game, but it was a point and click kind of thing, similar to the way X-Files worked, but it was like just B movie horror, and like it just got really outrageous and outlandish after the first half of the game gets over with, and it was a very cool experience. And again, I don't know, I think I did play the first one, but it wasn't as good because it came out like a year or two before, so the technology was a little bit weaker, and I think the video clips were a little bit less quality or something, and I don't know. Not that should really matter too much, but I don't know. I just couldn't get into the first one like I did the second one. So, but yeah, there's a lot of dumb stuff out there too, like kind of how VR is these days. You have what you would consider a VR game, and then some that are just like experiences. And there was definitely some of that stuff too. Like I think there was a Star Trek bridge something. You just go walk around the bridge and play clips of stuff, and just goofy stuff like that. So yeah, that's my guilty pleasure genre. These days that Wales Interactive is the way to go. I know they just recently released Double Switch, and there was a Night Trap maybe last year that was like the 25th anniversary edition, and they like took the video and remastered it, and both those games are almost identical, but they essentially set up this system to where you're in control of a house and like it's traps or security stuff, and it would play clips, and you would select different rooms that you wanted to watch the security camera on. So you could follow a narrative, walk from like the kitchen to the living room to whatever, and then these bad guys were kind of coming in, so you'd kind of see them on another monitor, and you have to switch and activate the trap like when it's the right time. So while you're playing the game, you're bouncing all over the place trying to get these traps going and not miss any, and let the bad guys win or whatever. And they got pretty tough, but it's really just a matter of memorization. You fail on one, so you gotta be at this place this next time. But even still, you're playing out this experience that's I don't even really know how long those are, 45 minutes, an hour or something like that, and you gotta get this sequence down of camera 3 here, hit the trap here, then you gotta jump to 7, and I know a lot of those windows would get increasingly closer together, and it would get pretty tough. But yeah, if you had interest in those, they're out for PS4. Night Trap, if you want to just check it out, that's at Choose Your Own Adventure by Wales Interactive. I streamed that a few days ago. I will be streaming that Infectious Madness game, whatever that title is. I can't even remember. That's probably the next one I'll get into, and I'll stream some stuff on that. And if you have interest in going back again, looking at new or old, you can go to fmvworld.com. And I'm sure there's some other sites out here, but this one's been around a long time, and they it's still up to date with anything they would consider an FMV game. And I know it doesn't have all of them, but it has a ton. So yeah, check that out if you're interested. And yeah, I guess that's my topic. So my guilty pleasure, my hobby. I love them. I don't really know why I love them. I just do. You don't even really watch too many cheesy movies because they're how they are. But for some reason, if it's in this format, I just can't get enough of it. So anyway, thanks for listening. Stay tuned for some future stuff. We still got a lot of things we're playing coming up. We've been playing a lot of Earth Defense Force, so I know there's a stream of that. And it's, speaking of B-movie quality stuff, it's really what it is. You're just fighting big giant monsters in a city, and it's not the greatest looking graphics, but it is a hell of a lot of fun. So check out some video of that. We got some upcoming streams, and talks and ramblings and whatever. So stay tuned. Thanks for listening.